Hi all, and welcome to another episode of Life Design Diaries, where Lucy and I bring you simplified knowledge to help you live a fulfilling life on your own terms. And this is a continuation of our little mini-series of the 7 books that have changed our lives. And so we're up to book number 5. It's my turn again, and I couldn't do this mini-series without including the classic that I think, a book which has touched so many lives, certainly the people that we run into anyway, which is The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Exactly. It is practically, if you're looking at the travel scene and the digital nomad scene, I would say easily 90% of people have either read it, heard it, read some of it.
Listen to his podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's followed on to now have the Tim Ferriss show, which is actually one of our favourite podcasts as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do you laugh?
Just because I expect some people might be able to draw some similarities between
and there
the
is
two.
similarities, exactly. And, you know, with this whole mini-series, 7 books that changed our lives, you could probably look at all these books, couldn't you? And then pick out elements of it that we're talking about, which, to be fair, is great, because that's the whole point of taking on the knowledge of the book in the first place, is that you then, you know, internalize it, absorb it, and then it becomes part of your kind of terminology, the way you act, and actually makes a difference in like what you actually want to do. So
how long ago did you read The 4-Hour Work Week?
I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago.
And do you remember what it was that like caused you to pick it up, or?
Do you know, I can't remember how I stumbled across it.
Because
it's to be fair, it's been in, like, as you search for books, I read books on my phone, and I naturally go onto the top charts, and it's been in the top charts for ever.
The last 10 years it's been out.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you see something enough times, you know, you can't ignore it. And if it's always in the top 10, it's obviously got a lot of people that are also reading it. So I think it was that, really. I think it was that kind of social proof. Maybe I read it on a blog.
You would have just started your first sales role then, wouldn't you, when you picked up that book to help you manage the day?
Yeah, well, exactly. So to give a sort of brief overview, obviously we're not giving full book reviews here. I more want to focus on kind of the lessons that we've taken from it. But as an overview, it gets quite a lot of hate, actually, because people always say 4-hour work week, that's impossible. Or that's very, very difficult and just unrealistic. But, you know, that's just, he always justifies it. That's quite a catchy title. It's not actually about working only 4 hours in 1 week. It's more about the principle of streamlining your day, your lifestyle, so that you get the maximum output for the minimum input.
Yes, kind of like defining your life rather than letting things like work or things you're obliged to do define you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And where Tim Ferriss is a very analytical guy, he also goes quite a lot into like tips and tactics that you can apply in terms of things like how you even read and write emails. You know, are you maximizing your email? Are you maximizing your phone calls? Like basically, it almost breaks down minute by minute of the activities you do in a day, and then looks at how you can maximize those.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he also says himself, doesn't he, like it was 10 years ago that he wrote the book, and whenever he picks it up now, talks about it, he cringes inside because some of it is quite brash and
bullish.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
But the basic principles, which we'll talk about now, are very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think if we're saying, like, if we're looking at what was the key elements I took from that, I think travel, big time. You know, most people would read that and then they would get kind of itchy feet and want to go traveling. And I probably fell into that bracket because it's not about just really getting you excited about traveling. But it kind of makes you reevaluate. Well, it certainly did for me anyway. Reevaluate how you view travel and how you kind of structure your life, because quite conventionally people would either want to go traveling very early before they kind of settle down, as it were, or either they'll retire and then maybe go and explore. And he's kind of broken those myths and sort of given a new path of travel.
It sort of challenges the way that you can live your life, working, being successful in your career and a career that you choose. and experiencing different things, whatever that may be. I mean, it's been funny, isn't it? We've come back home for a little while now, and the number one question we get is, so are you gonna get a job? And it's like, I have a job.
Yeah.
It's amazing how people want to put you in a box, and like when they can't see that. So I guess this book really challenges the box.
It challenges convention, on how you manage your day to day, on how you approach retirement, on how you look at travel. And
because doesn't he do like mini retirement?
Yeah, so one of the themes is mini retirement. So rather than batching things so that you are going to have a period of, having to work and never travel or never explore, and then after that you finally get your time. He completely debunks that and talks about this concept of mini retirement, where you essentially spread that retirement time but throughout your career. And so you take like 1 to even 3 month breaks at, in your peak career, as it would be.
Yeah, like once a year, every year.
Yeah.
And not even just for travel. It's like to go and learn jiu-jitsu or to go and feed baby orangutans. It's not necessarily just travel, is it? It's like going and learning a new skill. He's got some like really random skills, hasn't he?
But it is, he talks about the benefits that you get from traveling. And we firsthand have experienced those benefits, those kind of different perspective that you have on the world, and all those new experiences that come with travel. So I've said in previous episodes of this podcast that I never kind of thought I would go traveling. But I think this book had a big influence on changing my perception towards travel, and how actually there's a lot of positives in terms of new experiences that you have. Yeah.
Now, I remember when you first read the book, I thought, now I've not read the whole thing because I feel like I've kind of vicariously read it through Ross. I felt like this was a book that actually had a big effect on your actions. Like there's parts of the book where it helps you manage your inbox and things like that. Like, is that right? Is my assumption of that correct?
Yeah, 100%.
Like it gives you lots of tools. What is it?
Yeah, well, I think what's good about it is that there is actually some like real tangible examples of stuff. So I read so many books that are so theory based, and they talk about the kind of underlying principles behind things, but they won't approach, when you wake up at 8 a.m, do you check your inbox? Because if you leave that till 11 a.m, that might be quite beneficial because you can crack on for a few hours on your own time. So it's like real practical things like that. Another one was sort of just-in-time learning is a concept he talks about, which is, essentially you choose what you focus on, and you can learn, you can try and learn, and you definitely can learn too much that's not relevant. And so that kind of, I've taken that on board in regards to where I focus. And if a classic example is if you're starting a business, you may really enjoy the subject of learning about starting a business, but you may also really enjoy reading about selling a business, because that's something which is kind of within the same topic. And you might actually dig in and read a book or blogs and all this about equity shares and about selling businesses and about things like that. But actually, if you're wanting and at the stage of starting a business, then why would you start reading about stuff which is not relevant to you now? Now, I'm not saying that, if your passion's there, you wouldn't want to do that. But this kind of concept of just-in-time learning what you need at each stage, as opposed to just kind of overwhelming yourself with all knowledge.
Something that you still could do with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
A reminder on. So are there like some habits and routines?
Lucy likes to do the Tim Ferriss impression.
You like to do it because you can do it well.
No, you do it again.
Anyway, is there anything that you still kind of try and adhere to, or some things that have really stuck in your mind?
Yeah, I think, like I said, travel completely changed the way I look at it. Less is more, I think, is a kind of key trait which comes with a lot of the stuff that Tim Ferriss talks about in his book. The way that you, like I said, less information.
He kind of really simplifies everything, doesn't he?
Kind
of
a lot of people ask me about, goal setting and to-do lists and things. And, you know, in the book, he talks about the not to-do list as opposed to the to-do list. And it's just like flipping that on its head and just simplifying all these things down to like the critical things that you need to do. He talks about the 80-20 principle, which is really, really well known. If you don't know, it's like, you know, analyzing what are the 20% of things which are giving you 80% of the output, and focus on those as opposed to the others. You know, have you got 80% of clients which are only giving you 20% return, and that is vice versa. So you're just really focusing on what's important.
Yeah, he basically breaks down the businesses and things that he's been through, doesn't he? And kind of takes you through his lessons that he's learned and what he did to make things better for himself so that he could go and live this life of like flexibility and do as he did. So, for example, he had a business, I can't remember which one it was, but he decided to cancel the contracts with 80% of his clients and literally just focus on 20%. And it made the business skyrocket, didn't it? So, the book is brilliant, but it also does come with some proper case studies.
Yeah, exactly. And also just one thing that made me think then, he's got some really interesting ways to validate the market. I definitely learned that from this book about, you know, a lot of people, and we've talked about these sort of things and how you can kind of validate your idea before you launch and essentially de-risk it from spending loads of money, loads of time, and then having like this big launch which goes to no one, and really digging into the kind of ways you can leverage technology now to drive people to landing pages and things like that from social, to just kind of validate your idea and see if anyone's interested at like real low cost. So it's a good way to kind of, you know, approach how you would start or test your idea as well.
Yeah. And another thing on why I think the book is written quite well is I've since learned that he actually wrote the book with two individuals in mind, like two of his friends, and he'd gone away, had this time abroad, sold some businesses, had so much experience, and he could see two of his friends that were struggling and could really do with his help. So he basically, like, quite clearly, when you read the book, it almost feels like it's written for you. I think because he wrote it with those people in mind. Did you feel that?
Well, yeah. But what was the key thing that you got from that though?
Oh, I'm just saying, for anybody that's thinking about reading the book, it's very well written because that's how I felt when I read it. Ah,
right. Okay. Well, I would take that slightly different. The way I've, you know, taken what you just said then is that his approach to writing the book, which is a new venture for him, was to think about close friends. And you can absolutely apply that.
Oh, right. So just as a trick to, if you're thinking about writing a book.
If you're thinking about writing a book, or even if you're thinking about starting a business, or you're thinking about doing something, if you're thinking about writing a travel blog, you know, people listen to this, no doubt there'll be some of you that are thinking about writing a travel blog, but you might be trying to write it for the masses, but the kind of lesson that you've and I've taken from that is, what if you write it for your family? What if you write it for a specific set of people that you know, and then you can kind of just helps navigate your tone of voice, because sometimes you can get kind of stuck trying to please everyone, and then you'll please no one. So The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Probably, I reckon 90% of you listening to this have already read the book. If you haven't, then, you know, we've got a link to it in our show notes. So click on that. Definitely worth a read. I think at some point or another, you're probably going to read it anyway, because it's kind of taken over. So why not read it now? And I hope you enjoyed this episode. This was book number 5 in the 7 books that changed our lives. Next episode, Lucy's going to share one of her books again. So we really hope you enjoy it and look forward to that next episode.